Hello there, welcome to my channel. This is the second in a three-part series around the iFlytek AINOTE Air 2, which is an 8-inch device that was released last year. Now that's important because I've started to see advertisements for the AI Note Air 2, but it's for a new device being released this year, which is a 10-inch device by the same company. So for some reason, they're naming it the same name, but they are not indicating in the materials I've seen that the new device is 10 inches. So just to be clear, I'm reviewing last year's 8-inch model. So this is the 8-inch model, not the 10-inch, although this video will probably be relevant to both models because they are going to use probably the same UI, it's just the 10-inch might be a slightly more advanced version. So a lot of things in this video presumably would apply to that device, but I haven't seen it, so I'm just speculating on that point. Now, let's talk about what the purpose of the visual tour is, and this is something unique to my channel. So one of the things that I was always frustrated with as a consumer is the fact that you can really never get a sense of what these devices can really do. You can't really tell in many cases based on the marketing materials, how a device actually operates and what's puffery and what's real. These devices are rarely available to be tested out in a local store or what have you. So the purpose of the visual tour isn't a review in and of itself, but it's meant to go through the device to get a feel for what it can do, and really understand, the different aspects and how the device operates in a way you wouldn't normally be able to tell. So I've had people sometimes call my visual tours, great advertisements for the devices, because that really is the point. I'm showcasing what the device can do, and I'm really not reviewing at this stage. Having said all of that, it doesn't matter to me whether you buy any of these devices or not. I don't do affiliate links. I don't have any type of relationship to the company on the few occasions when I do, because they give me a device to review. I'm very transparent about that. But in this video and this device, I just paid for it out of my own pocket from Amazon. So I'm really just trying to show off the device and give you a sense of what it is. It's a long video. It's going to go for almost an hour. And very few people are going to watch the entirety of the video. But if you did, by the end of the video, you would have very little ambiguity about what the device is and if it might be a potential fit for your use case. Now, having said that, and again, knowing that people will not want to sit through, almost an hour of me just kind of going through the device, I put ample chapters in this video, and that's meant so if you have a particular interest in a particular feature that might be unique about this device, or you just want to focus on the notes, for example, you just go to that chapter and then I cover that in that section. So it's really meant to be kind of a reference video in that sense, where you don't have to watch it all the way through. Great if you do, but you don't have to, and those are what the chapters are there for. Okay, I think that's all the gory details. Let's just go ahead and dive on in and start looking at what this device is all about. Okay, so let's take a look at the settings section of the device, and to get there, I'm going to go ahead and click on this gear icon right here. And then the first thing we're going to see is where you log in to your account. And this is an account you'd set up with Flytek. It's free, and it is required for some of the functionality on the device. So for example, if you wanted to back up notes so that you could see them on the app, then you'd have to have an account. And if you want to use the ChatGPT interface, you're going to have an account for that. Then there's probably other things as well, one of which, for example, is if you're searching across notes, you need an account to do that. You can still search within a note, and you can still do many of the OCR functions, but there are a number of things that you can't do unless you have that account. If we keep going down the side panel here, you've got your standard Wi-Fi connection, you've got your Bluetooth connections. If we go to other here, you'll notice that this is where you can do Miracast, and we'll see later you can also do that from the drop-down bar as well. If we go into the General tab, then there's a number of things. Here we can set the brightness of the device. So there's the ability to manually select the cold or warm lighting, whatever combination you want, and whatever you select for that lighting will become your custom option. So if I want half of each roughly, I would go like that, and then that would become my default custom option. The other options are preset, so dark is just a couple bits of cold. Low light is a few more bits of cold, and then close is none at all. This selection of being able to manually adjust the lights is only available here in the Settings tab. Next we'll come to Wallpaper and Signature. And here there are a number of different wallpapers that you can choose from. You can also select a signature, but let me quickly show the options. Right, so those are the different options. And then your signature is just literally whatever you want to write in a box. So here I've written Moss Edition, and I've selected this wallpaper. So this is what happens when I go into my sleep mode. If we go out of this and let's back out further, then we can go into language and region. So here we'll go ahead and see the languages that are available. Those are the native languages available on this device. And then you can put your country and region in. You can either decide whether you want to show the battery percentage in the icon or not. So if I show it, that's what it looks like. And I prefer not, so we'll go to conceal. And there you are. You can decide how you want the screen to rotate, and those are the two options that are available if you decide to go to a landscape mode. Here you just set your date and time, and we did that in the setup sequence. Floating ball is something we'll look at later in the video with apps. It's only applicable when you're in an app. So you can either choose here in the settings, either to show it or not show it in that. And we'll go over what the floating ball does when we're in the app section of the video. And then you can decide when the calendar week starts. If we go into lock and shutdown, these are where your power saving features are. So auto lock is basically also would be auto sleep. And those are your options there. So you've got different time intervals or never. And that puts it into sleep mode. So if I click the power button right now, I'm now in the sleep mode. And if I click the power button again to come out, it just takes 1 or 2 seconds to come out. Auto shutdown basically completely shuts down the device. Those are your time intervals there. And if you shut it down and you press the power button, it takes a number of seconds to be able to reboot. And I haven't timed that, but in other devices with this feature, it tends to take anywhere between maybe 25 to 45 seconds. So it's a little bit of an inconvenience. But the contra to that is you do have a lot of battery savings as a result. So if you're going to be away from your device for long periods of time, having an auto shutdown mode on will definitely save a lot of battery. If we move down to keys and gestures, then what we'll see is, first off, you can change what the button on the Smart Pen does. So here you can either make it an eraser, you can make it to switch to Smart Pen, which is the default. And that unlocks the smart features, for example, like the star and the to-do lists that we'll see in the Notes application. You can have it where you press and hold the eraser, and then you can disable it. Your gestures are here, and they're preset gestures. You can't select them, but you can select whether they're on or off. So here we see the gesture for the swipe down bar, which actually is anywhere on the top of the screen. It doesn't have to be the right side. The bottom, if you swipe from the bottom, you get the task manager. If you do 3 fingers down, that's a screenshot. And then you can undo by do 3 fingers to the left, or you can restore by 3 fingers to the right. And of course, those last 3 can all be toggled on or off. Security has either a passcode or you can use a fingerprint. So the power button has a fingerprint reader, and those are available if you want to lock your device. And then here's just some information about some of the app permissions and their user agreements and so on. They have kind of a user help section here, and they have an about, and then you can update your device. And here it's checking we're on the latest version, and that's the version that I have reviewed. And that is basically what you get in the settings. Okay, at any time in the device, you can swipe down to pull up the drop-down bar, or you can select this upper right corner that has the time, the Wi-Fi status, and the battery, and that will bring up the same drop-down bar. So I'll go ahead and tap on that, and here it is. You have a couple shortcut buttons up here. You've got your lighting settings, your sound setting, and you've got your pen tray here. So going through those in turn, you have whether your Wi-Fi is on or not. Here it's on. Same with Bluetooth. Currently it's on the off position. Here you have the ability to screencast. This is using Miracast, so you have to have a receiving device in order to be able to project your screen onto another device. But that is available here. We'll go ahead and click out of that. Going further, we have an airplane mode. If you want to refresh the screen in case you have any type of ghosting, then you would click on that button like so. You can take a screenshot. You can rotate the device. You can provide feedback. So if you click on that, then they have a FAQ section. They've got an actual place where you can submit feedback and add an associated attachment. And then you can look at your history of providing feedback here. And then if you click on more settings, that simply takes you into the settings menu, and then you can go to the chapter of the video that covers that to see what's there. Here are your presets for your front lighting. So I can go low light, dark, or whatever my custom lighting arrangement is. This can be defined, there's nowhere to define that here, but you can define this in the settings. We'll go ahead and turn that off. You have your sound, so there are speakers here on top. So you can set your sound accordingly. And then finally, you have your pen styles and thickness. And whatever you set here will be universal across all of its apps. So across notes, schedule, and reading will all be whatever you select here. You can select these in each of those apps as well, but this gives a nice global way of changing your pen style and having that be consistent across different applications. So that is the drop-down bar option for this device. So let's take a look at how you do gesture navigations across the device. And we'll start with this bottom row or line here. And it's actually not part of the screen. It's hard to tell, but there's a little line you can see right across there, and that's where the screen begins. This is actually a touch bar that has 3 different functions. So the first function we're going to cover is getting into the chat GPT interface. And what you do basically is you put your finger here and then you slide it across like so. And then in a few moments, it will load your chatbot interface. And this is a pretty standard interface where you'd write your query down here. You have to type it in, there's no audio input, and then you can send it and it'll give a response. So that's basically the main way that AI integrates with this device is through this chatbot interface. If we go over here to the right, there's this thing called the Quick Notes. Now every device, or most devices I should say, that have e-note taking have a Quick Notes option, but this one is a little bit unique. If I take my finger and swipe in like so, then what will pop up is this kind of notepad or sticky pad, if you will, that is called the Quick Notes. And you can start to take notes in here. You can do multiple pages. If you close it, it's going to remember that. So at any time, you can go in and your notes will appear. And there's an example of that. Now, if I click on this More button over here, there's a number of options. One is called Export and New. So what that means is if I click on that, all the contents of the Quick Notes will be loaded into a note file. And then it will clear itself. So basically the contents will be saved as a notebook and then you can start over. You can also go into the list of notes that have been previously saved, or you can add or delete a page. So it's fairly simple, but the fact that you can pull this up at any time, at any location, makes it kind of a neat little feature. Now the last thing that I want to highlight as it relates to this bar is there is a kind of a page turning slider here at the bottom. And let's go ahead and go in to the user manual and we'll see this in action. So I'm going to take my finger to activate it. I'm going to swipe like so, and here it is. And now if I swipe, it will advance the page, and of course it can go backwards as well. Now, if I swipe a longer swipe, it'll advance more pages, like so, and you can really zip ahead using that slider. But if you can kind of get the right touch, you can use this as a page advancement button. And you can see you have to be careful though, because you can jump ahead fairly easily if you don't get it just quite right. But that is the functionality of the lower bar. Now, in terms of general on-screen navigation, if I swipe from the bottom, then I'm going to get the Task Manager. And this is also pretty much as close as you get on the device to going to the home screen. So you'll notice that in the background, we're back into the general home screen. So I do have to exit out of the Task Manager to get there, but this is basically, in lieu of a one-button home screen, it's kind of like a two-button home screen where you swipe up and then you get out of the Task Manager to get there. In the Task Manager, you can switch between tasks by simply clicking on them. I'll go ahead and click on that, for example. Takes us into our chatbot. And then I can get rid of these tasks by Xing out of them, or I can get rid of all of them by clicking on the bin, and there you go. If I swipe down, then we see the drop-down bar. And if I go into a note, we can start looking at some of the other gestures that are available. So let's go ahead. I can advance the page by swiping. So I swipe to the left to advance the page. I can swipe again to add another page. I can swipe to the right. If I go ahead and write something here, I can take my 3 fingers to undo. And then I can take those same 3 fingers to return those strokes. Lastly, if I take my 3 fingers and swipe down, then I can take a screenshot, which I can then either share or just save onto the device. The last thing I want to show is the navigation ball, which only appears in the context of applications. So if you go into the apps, and let's just go ahead and go into Kobo as an example, we can see we get this navigation ball. So I'm going to go ahead, as soon as this loads, click on the ball, and there's a number of options here. You can go home, you can open up the multitasking, which is the same as swiping from the bottom. You can also do the drop-down pop-up, which you could also swipe from above. There is the e-ink center, back, and you can hide the navigation ball. The e-ink center only appears here in this context, and you can go between what they call the HD display or what's best for speed. So in other words, if you end up, like for example, maybe doing a YouTube video, or you're doing Google News where there's a lot of scrolling, you probably want to use best speed, but otherwise the device always defaults to HD mode. And in fact, for anything outside of applications, you only have the HD mode available. There's no switching. So those are all the navigation items on this device. So the main application on this device is Notes. And here we are in that application. And we're going to go ahead and first focus a little bit on navigation. So you'll notice up above, there's kind of a cookies structure. So right now it shows directory, and it's just listing all the notes on the device. And we'll show later how it's listing the order. But the key here is I can go ahead and click on this directory, and there's a number of options. So I had picked all notes, but I can also go here and go into the folder structure. I can go into any notes that I've flagged. In this case, I've only flagged 1, and there it is. Any notes that are quote-unquote encrypted, that just simply means there's a passcode on the note. And you've got local notes, and any notes deleted but not cleared out are here in the recycle bin. So let's go ahead and go back into all notes. So if we keep going along, you'll see this little icon for a tag. If I click on that, tags are based on a file. So they're not associated with a page or a contents of a page. They're associated with the entire file. So I have the option of creating tags. So you can click on this, and you simply type in the name of the tag. And then that will appear down below. There are different ways to sort tags. So if you had a lot of tags, then this might be useful. And those are basically the options, this is also for notebooks in general, where you can either do it by the title, the update time, or the create time, and you can either go increasing or decreasing. But again, there's only one. So if I click on the tag, then all the files that have that tag associated with it will appear in my search. Let's go ahead and back out of that. So the next option then is the view option. And again, we just went over with tags, the different view options. The only thing in addition is you can switch between an abstract and a list mode. So let's go ahead and go to the abstract mode. And then you can see each file takes up a little more space. You get some of the OCR of the contents, as well as the header, what folder it's in, when it was created, and if there's any tags related, or if it's flagged, and where it's stored is located here as well. I tend to prefer the list view because you can get more notes on a page that way. So there we have it. Now what you have now is you've got 3 buttons which basically indicate the type of note that you want to create. So we'll just take them in order. This first one is actually a text note. So if I go ahead and click on that, it will open up this text note. I can go up here and click on this title, and I can change the title if I want. So we'll go ahead and just call it text note, like so. It's close enough. And then you have some standard word processing options available to you. There's your pen style, so you can write in a text note. So I'll just say hi, and then if I go over here to text, and I just click anywhere I want in the note, I can start writing, like so. Of course, you've got some of your formatting options down below, including checkboxes and bullet lists. And then you have this button which will basically automatically sync the note to the cloud. You've got a search icon here. You have an export button here, and those are basically the formats. It's either this web format or Word, and then you can either do it via email or QR code. And then if you want to quickly move between notes, that's what this button here is for. And this will move between all different types of notes. So you can tell what they are based on the icon. Those are general standard notes. And then here is a text note, and there is a meeting note, for example. So pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and back out of this. And we'll go to the next item, which is write, and that is your standard note. So we'll go ahead and click on that. If I click on the title of the note, there's the title. I can edit it there, but I can also edit it by writing it in this box. So we'll get to that in a second. Here's the date the note was created. Here is the folder that it goes into. If I click on that, I can pick a different folder. We'll go ahead and do that. So now I can either just create a new folder or put it into a folder that's already existing. So we'll put it here in practice. And now the note is in the practice folder. And if I want to add tags, I can do that. There is a directory down below, so go to the Focus on Outline chapter of this video if you want to see that in action. Let's go ahead and just write in a little title here. We'll just call it fun. And then OCR will then change the title, and there you have it. There's another place where you can change the title via the keyboard, and I can also just erase it, and now it's foo. If we go across the top, there's your undo and redo. Your pen styles, which we also talk about in a different chapter, are here. If you don't want to press the button for the smart features, you can click on this icon. Let's go ahead and click on that. And if you click on it again, it'll give you a summary of what the smart features are, and I have sections on each of these except for lasso, so we'll get to that in a second. If you want to use OCR on the page, you can click on it and it will transcribe the page. Here's where you do templates, and I also focus on that in a separate chapter as well. Here is where you can export the notes, and those are your options, similar to the text note, but this one adds the feature of PDF. And if I want to switch between notes, there's a list here, and there's up to 10 on this list at any time. So it's the last 10 notes I've looked at. I can quickly move into those notebooks. If we click on the More button, then we've got our template style, which I talk about in the template chapter. You can refresh the page if you're getting ghosting. You can trigger the syncing if you have your account active. You can delete a page. or you can go into page management, which is the same as clicking on the number down below. You can search in the notebook, you can encrypt it, which just means putting a passcode on it, or you can delete the note there. So those are all the major functions of the note. Let's take a quick look at the lasso tool. So I'm going to go back to the pen and I'll just type in hi, and then I'm going to go ahead, we'll click on this here and I'll circle it. And now we have the lasso selection. So there's a number of things. I can make it into a to-do item this way. I can do an AI search on that, what I wrote, or I can clear it, or I can cancel. Let's go ahead and cancel to get out of here. I can now just move this around like so onto the screen. There is no copy or paste options that I'm aware of. If we go to the bottom down here, we can obviously either move forward in pages or back. Again, if I click on the number, then that's another page management window. And here I can move a page, the order of pages. So if let's just create another one, for example, and let's go back to that first page. I can either move it over one, or I can move it back. I can also create a page before or after my selected page. And here I can copy a page or I can delete it. I can also take a look at this in a grid format by clicking on that. And then there's your progress bar, and then your sheets are bigger with more options located above here. So pretty general but robust page management features. And that is essentially the note-taking application. Okay, the final note type is record. And this is something that you would use in a meeting. This device does have microphones, so it's going to pick up what I'm saying and it's going to transcribe it. So let's go ahead and press that button. And in addition to that, you'll notice that the clock has just started, so it'll start transcribing what I'm saying here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon. It's currently got the circle with a slash, but I want multiple people. So we'll click on that and we'll open it so it has multiplayer mode. And let's go ahead. Okay, now it's connected. So now it's identifying me as speaker 1. Let me change my pitch and see if it identifies me as a separate speaker. Hello, Jeff. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. And see, we can now see that it's identifying the different speakers accordingly. We can go ahead and finish. And then what you're left with is a transcription. And we can see the full transcription here. I could have also taken notes as the meeting was going on down below. I could have done this during the recording. I can do it now. I can also continue the recording. So there was an option to pause it as we were in the recording mode itself. But if I had stopped it and then wanted to continue, I could have done that as well. So they both kind of perform that same functionality. You can see there's a slight different change in the menu above. So yes, we still have undo and redo. We still have the pen selection and the smart pen, but we now have an AI button here. If we click on that, it'll do a meeting summary. This next box over here is basically you can add in either an image or a photograph, and then you have your export functions, which are similar to what we've seen before, although it includes now a recording file option. And we have this same icon where we can zip between different notes, up to 10, and then your more button here. We'll click on that. And then it's a little bit different. You can change your font size, you can change some of the look, and so on. So that is just a very basic overview of the note-taking function on this device. One of the three major apps on the device is Schedule or Calendar. And if we click on that, we can see we're on the Calendar tab. And there's a daily view of the calendar. You can also switch to week, like so. And it looks like that, and it highlights some of your scheduled items on there. And if we go to month, then it looks like that, and that's what it looks like. If we go back to the day section, you'll notice that there's a little dot on the 4th. So if I click on that, then you can see what those items are. I can click on this little information button to click on and view it, and here I can change the date and the timing. Here's all day, but I can actually select an actual time and select a reminder, maybe even have it repeat and put any type of notes. All that's possible in any type of item you load onto the calendar. And you can do that here in this new schedule as well. So it'll start off with this window. So let's just type in hello, and then we'll go, oops, there we go. And then we'll go confirm. And then it'll just show up like this. And then I'll need to put in the rest of the specifics by clicking on that informational button. So pretty standard type of calendaring. We've already gone over the to-dos in the focus section, so take a look at that. Same with focus star. But if we go down to weekly, you find a really unique kind of thing I haven't seen in any other device. And what you have here basically is a recording of when events have happened, whether it's creating a note or creating a calendar item. It's all kind of logged in here. And then you're able actually to view it, and believe it or not, to download it as well. So if I click on this icon here, you can see I can download it either via Excel or Word, and I can either put it on the device or I can put it to whoever I want via email, as long as the size of the file isn't too large. And I can actually scroll. This is representing a full week. And these are all the activities that I've done, and then you can also advance. Now, if you create a notebook and then you delete that notebook, that will actually disappear from the chronology. So the only thing that remains on the chronology are things that are still around. If they go away, then they disappear from here as well. But a very kind of interesting feature that, again, I haven't seen before. Now, if we go down a little bit further, we can see we can integrate with other calendars, and we'll go ahead and click on that. Okay, so the only type of calendar you can add are Google calendars. There's no option for Outlook or anything else. That is one limitation, but you are able to sync to Google. And I haven't tested this, but my understanding is that it is bidirectional. So if you add events on this device, it will map over to Google and vice versa. So that functionality is there. And then you have an icon below that talks about the syncing. So a fairly straightforward application, but I think the addition of the to-do and focus stars make it very unique amongst e-ink devices. So let's take a look at one of the three main apps on the device. This is the reading application. And this is what you would use to read any type of documents that you bring onto the device. And that could be a PDF, that could be an EPUB. Obviously, because of the screen size, PDFs might be a little bit problematic, but we'll take a look at that as we look at the user manual, because there are some options to help there. Here we are kind of in the main bookshelf. So these are all the documents that have come up. And if we click on this all formats, you can see the different type of formats that this can read. You also have the ability to search on titles. And if you want to add a document in, there's a couple ways to do that. One is you can do a USB import, so connecting this device to your computer via a cable, or you can do a Wi-Fi import, in which case it'll give you a URL, and then on your computer you can drag and drop files. And this is how I brought in this EPUB file, and it worked really well. If we kind of finish up here with the settings, you can see you can create a folder, you can change how it looks. This is how you can organize the documents, either by title, when they were updated or created, whether it was increasing or decreasing. And down here is how it looks visually. This is currently a grid format, but then I can also go down to a list format, which would look like this. So a little clearer about what document type you have, but you don't have the advantage of seeing the thumbnails in this format. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to grid. There we go. And then lastly, you have the ability in this More button to see any reading notes that you've created. So I've created some notes, for example, for the user manual. So if I click on that, those are my notes, and it's only the pages that I've taken notes on. Go ahead and get back out. Let's go ahead and actually go into that user manual. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And the interface, I think, is the same regardless of file format. I haven't looked at all different formats. I've only looked at PDFs and EPUBs at this time, but they've been consistent between those two. So first off, up here on top, you've got a little bit of a menu bar, which you can hide by clicking on this icon on the very left. Let's click on that there. There we go. And then that goes away. If I click on it again, then it comes up. This is basically your pen selection tool. So your pen is active, and it's whatever is globally set. Draw a ticket is basically essentially it's a lasso tool. And then it gives you a few options. You can highlight, you can create an excerpt, you can search, do an AI search, copy, select all, or cancel. So, and then you can use these tags to either expand or contract what you circled. If we click on this notes button, like so, then you can just write in notes. So instead of writing on the document, you can actually just attach notes in kind of this little screen here, and you can click out of that by clicking on that, like so. So here's another example of where I put some notes into the document. And you can see you get this little tab down here below to refer to those notes anytime you want to pull them back up. Let's go ahead and get out of that. Now over here in the hamburger, then we can see more menu options. So sticking on top, there is a table of contents. So whatever table of contents you have in the device will show up here. And if you have any bookmarks on the device, those would show up there. There's your ability to search in the document. Any notes that you write is here in the All Notes. So there are quick links to all the notes that I've written. So there's an example of that. And you can export those notes. And then if you have issues where you're touching accidentally, you can then deactivate touch to prevent you being able to swipe. There's where you can bookmark. There's where you can share. So let's click on that and see what the options we have there. So you can see you can either export it, use your email client to send it out, or just do it in the form of a screenshot. And then if you want to look at any other books or files that you've opened, you can do you can jump between them quickly using this, what they call this lately button. And then this is basically just a button that goes into your task manager. If we go down to the bottom, we see we have this progress indicator. So you can see the different pages. You can either use the arrows to scroll, or you can use the bottom bar to scroll accordingly. And then there is a different kind of grid view of those options. Let's go ahead and back out of there. We can do a little bit of altering how images, texts, or PDFs in general look. Let's go ahead and select that to give you a sense of what those options look like. We'll do that again for text. Okay, so kind of just a few toggles that you can use on each to kind of manipulate how it looks on the device. And you can go vertical or landscape. Some PDFs will be quite small on this screen size. They might be a little more legible when you see them landscape as opposed to portrait as we have it now. Here you have the brightness toggle. This is another place where you can kind of manually set or use any of the presets. And if we click on the More button, then those are the options available, just kind of general display options. Now there is the ability to pinch and zoom. So if I just go ahead and start that process, you'll see that there is a grid over here, and let me zoom out, and then I can move it around accordingly. So it's not bad. It's a little choppy, which is what you would expect because it is using kind of an HD refresh mode. But what's nice about this is even though I've taken my hand off of the screen, this window remains, so I can still navigate like so. That certainly helps make it more tolerable to read PDFs on a device with such a small screen size. So that is basically the functionality of navigating inside of a document. And of course you can, let's go in the PDF, I'm sorry, the EPUB rather. You can, advance pages by tapping like so. I can advance on the right, and I can go backwards on the left. So pretty straightforward stuff there. Let's go ahead and get out of the document. There is a bookstore. We'll click on that. The bookstore is basically just full of public, freely available documents. So none of these would cost anything. I should point out we're getting a little bit of ghosting up here. I don't know if you can see that. Ghosting is generally well managed on the device, but if you do run into that, you can swipe down and refresh the page, and the ghosting will go away. The Office Center is just a place where you can view documents. We can see there's a Word document, an Excel. You can do PowerPoint as well, and you can do all of that here. You can connect with OneDrive. It's the only drive that I believe is available currently to connect with, but that is possible here. So you can also bring in documents through OneDrive if you like, in addition to Wi-Fi and the USB. And if you want to see your folder structure on the document itself, you can drill down your folder structure, and there it is. So that's basically the functionality of the reading application. There is a search option on the device, and it's pretty powerful because it's not just going to search for titles, but it's also going to search for handwriting as well. So if we go ahead and click on that, for example, I'm going to just go ahead and type in hello. There we go. And then we can see that it's found it both in a note, but it's also found it in the bookstore. A couple of the books there have the word hello. But I'm curious about this note, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it. There we go. And there's the hello that it found. You notice it found the print version, but not the cursive or script version. And that's not because it can't search on script. I think it's having a hard time with my O, which admittedly isn't very good. But normally it would actually find it. But in this case, it's only recognizing the print one. So it is, of course, dependent on the quality of your handwriting, and mine can be quite variable, as we can see here. But it certainly picked up the first one. Sometimes it'll pick up the scripts version as well. So anyway, a very powerful search functionality as long as the handwriting you're searching on is legible. So this device does have a camera, and that's for the purposes of a document scanner. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a quick picture of this kind of thing I got in the mail, and we'll see what it looks like on the device. Okay, so I basically just clicked on the scanner icon there in the home menu. The camera came up. I created a new image, and then the camera came up. I clicked the button to take this picture. I can kind of edit a little bit, but let's just go ahead. I like what it's done in terms of identifying the edges of the document, so I'm just going to go with that default. So here's the image, and now I can go ahead and write on that image like this, like so. I've got a few functions up here to either kind of add a page or to edit it, and then finally I can then share that image. So I could take a document, for example, that I need to sign. I can go ahead and just sign on that document like so, and then I can share that with myself or whoever. So, a simple but nice little document scanning feature on the device. So the device does have an email client, and you can see the icon right there. You can also see that there's a kind of black circle with the number 1, which indicates that I have something in my inbox. If you click on this icon for the first time, you have the ability to log in either to an Outlook account, a Google account, or other mail account. So it's pretty standard for an Android device to be able to load different types of email accounts. I believe you can only load one at a time, but it does work fairly well. And basically, here's the email that I haven't read yet from myself. Here are some other emails that I've already read. It's a fairly straightforward email application. The one thing I will highlight is if you click on Compose, you have the ability either to do handwriting. So we'll go ahead and just write one there. And then if you do handwriting, it will literally just send what you write. It won't do OCR. It will look like this on the other end. If you want to elect for keyboard input instead, you can do that, but you can't do both. So if I select keyboard input, you'll see here's the message basically saying you can have one or the other. Are you sure you want keyboard? Because we're going to delete what you just wrote. So that's basically the one kind of nuance there. But a pretty straightforward mail client. There's not a lot to say about it. It seems to work fairly well in my minimal testing. It gets the job done. So there you go. Okay, so let's talk about the application section of the device. And you get there by clicking on that little waffle. So we'll click on that. And now we're in that app section. Now there is some native apps that come with the device or can be downloaded onto the device. And I'll click on that real quickly. There's just about a page and I think one more that's available. So there's that. But then you can also activate Google Play, and there are some instructions about that above. I've already activated mine. And most of the apps you see are in fact from the Google Play Store. You can click on the store. You can pretty much download any application that is available on Google Play, but keeping in mind that, you know, some are better on e-ink screens than others. Reading applications, for example, tend to do really well, but any applications that have a lot of refreshing of the screen or video or scrolling don't fare quite as well. But certainly you have the ability to look at various reading apps like Kobo, like Kindle, like Libby, and so on. You can download them here and use this device as an e-reader for those applications. So our next area of focus is going to be around templates, and that's because this device does templates just a little bit differently than we see with other devices. So I'm going to go ahead and just start a note. And you'll notice that immediately there's this default template that comes up. Now, if I click on this More button here, and then you can see here on top it says Style, and there are some options there and an arrow. Let's go ahead and click on the arrow. So what you're seeing here basically is these are the default options that can be selected to come up with any note. So right now I have lined small, but there are other options as well, a few other lined options. You've got dots, vertical, grid, and blank. I can click on the administration button, and then that allows me to set any of these as the default. So that's the first thing. Now if I advance in pages, we'll go ahead, you can see that the template carries over. But then there's a secondary template function, and that's with this icon right here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And this is where you see more specific templates. So here's what they call the planning templates. There's page 1. There is the remainder. Here's the document, page 1, and the remainder. Here's analysis. This all fits in one page. Here's a style. And there's a number of these. So this is page 1. This is page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5. You have health. There's your options there. And then you have custom. You can import your own templates and you can see the specifications there. Let's go ahead and pick a style template. And you'll notice that some of these have download buttons and some don't. That just means that some are already downloaded, but all can be downloaded on demand. Let's go ahead and do one of my favorite, which is the hexagon grid. Here we go. Okay, so now I've covered over the default template with this hexagon grid. If I swipe, I have an option to either continue to use that template or to return back to the default template. I'll go ahead and continue to use it here. We'll swipe again and I'll say, no, I think we're good. And now I'm back to normal. So just a slightly different version of templates, not a dramatic departure from what other devices do, but just a slight quirk in how iFlytek approaches. And they have a really nice selection, as you can see, of templates to choose from. Okay, so let's focus on stars. So this is a pretty interesting system that they have in place on the iFlytek. It's somewhat similar to what we have on the Super Note, but it's got a few quirks. It's different ultimately in the end. But basically you can see here I've written something. I'm going to go ahead and activate my Smart Pen by clicking on the button, and I'm just going to draw a star real quick. And it doesn't matter where I draw the star. I could draw it over here, I could draw it over here, but it will capture everything on the same line. So you'll notice now we have this star that is blank. And what does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and go to the calendar. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this note. And now I'm going to go to schedule. And then there's a section called focus star. So what's happened now is that star is captured on this list, and it's also date stamped. So the fact that it's white means that it's connected to this particular date, and I can search either the last week, the last month, the last 3 months, or create my own custom date range in order to identify when that star was placed. If I click on the star, then it will go back to the notebook that had it open. Now you might have noticed that some of the stars were filled in, and I can fill it in here. We'll go ahead and click on that. There it is. And let's go ahead and go back into the focus star section, and now you notice that it's black here as well. So what that means is because it's highlighted and filled in, those stars will always appear on top of the list and are independent of the time selection. So no matter how far, much in the future we go, as long as that's highlighted, that will be there on top. There is a More button over here. If you click on that, you can basically cancel continuous attention, means to deselect it. You can actually move this over to the to-do list. You can basically go to the notebook, which is the same if you click on it, or you could edit or delete it. So those are your options there. So it's a really nice reference tool that they've built into the device, and this is bidirectional. So we noticed how in the note we both created it, that caused it to appear here, and then in the note we also selected it, which caused it to change to filled in here. If I go ahead and click on this, so I'm going to no longer make it a focus item, and then we go back to the notebook, you'll notice that it's not filled in there either. So these are constantly connected with each other and are always in the same state, regardless of whether you're in the notebook or whether you are in the star focus area. So our next focus area is going to be on to-dos. And again, we're going to go ahead and press this button, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. It doesn't matter whether I draw the circle on this side or on this side, so I'll just go ahead and draw it on the right to be a little different. We'll go ahead and do that. And now we've logged a to-do, and you can see the button there. So let's go ahead and go into the calendar app, like so, and we'll go to to-dos. And there you can see the follow up on Monday. So it used OCR to basically give me my to-do. Now I can go ahead and click on this, and that will show that it's completed, and it'll actually move it over here the next time I come into this menu, and you can see it struck it out as well. Now one of the interesting aspects of this is it's not completely bidirectional. So the fact that I've checked it off here doesn't have any impact on the actual note. There we go. We see that here it isn't highlighted, even though it was highlighted in the calendar app. Let's return to the calendar app. Let's unselect that. That will cause it to go back over to here. Here we can, because it's not selected, we can jump to the note from here. And now I can go ahead and click this. And then if we go back to the calendar, we can see it's gone and it's in the completed section. So it's not bidirectional, but it does go one way. So if whatever I do in the notebook will be reflected here, but if I select it as completed here, it won't be reflected in the notebook. So just one little quirk to be aware of, but generally speaking, a very powerful feature that this device has. You can also click on a little bit more information on your to-do. So for example, you can select an actual deadline to tie it to a particular date, so the calendar can come up. And then you can also set a reminder as well. If we click on the More button, then you have the ability to move it on how it appears on the list, send it right to the top, or to delete it accordingly. So a nice, simple, but I think effective to-do list functionality where you can quickly identify to-dos as you're taking notes and then manage them here. And I keep calling it the calendar app, but technically it's the schedule application. Okay, so the next focus area that we're going to highlight is around an outline feature. And this is basically pretty analogous to Supernote's header feature. A key difference is Supernote's header feature, you can capture not only what's written, but any kind of images you have, and that forms a table of contents for the notebook. This doesn't do that. This is only text-based. So in that sense, it's a little bit closer to Books' outline feature, but I think generally speaking how it's implemented is a little more reminiscent of Supernote than it is of Books. Now let's kind of show that in action. So first off, if I click on this drop-down bar, which has the title of the file, you'll notice in this bottom section there's only one entry, which is outline, and that refers, of course, to the header that I've written here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pressing on the button, I'm going to draw a triangle. I just have to draw a continuous triangle and it'll create that image. And if we skip ahead, I'll create another triangle and then we'll go ahead and create two more, like so and like so. Okay, so now if I click on the outline button, you'll notice that there they are in the order that I created the triangles. Well, actually, it's the order of the pages first, and then it's the order that I created the triangles next. Now, you can change the order by moving the pages around. So if we go here to all the pages, we'll select the first page, and I'm going to go ahead and move that to the end. All right, here we are. So now we see that this title page is actually on page 3. If I click on the outline, it has adjusted that accordingly and moved this at the end. So this will adjust as I move pages. It will not adjust if I move items on the list. It'll always maintain the order that the triangles were created, regardless of whether I move things around. And in fact, you can't actually move triangles around. If I go ahead and highlight this in my lasso tool and then drag the lasso down, the text will go down, but the triangle will remain. Let's go ahead and take a look at that in the outline. And you can see it's still retained what I had originally entered. That aspect hasn't adjusted. But that in a nutshell is how the outline works, and these are all now hyperlinked. So if I click on 2, for example, then it will take me to that page and it'll highlight the piece of the outline that I selected. So that is how outlines work on this device. Okay, so our next area of focus will be on pen styles. And you have the ability in the app to select pen styles. So if I click on this icon that's already selected, tap it again, here is the pen styles here. So there's actually 5 of them. These last 2 are actually eraser styles. With each pen style, you have 4 levels of thickness on the line, and these actually just correspond to the 2 eraser functions. Actually, it's only this eraser. This is an area eraser right here. Now, I can either change the pen styles here, or I can bring the drop-down bar where the settings are globally set. So this is across all applications. Now, here I've just done an example of, in each page there's a pen style, and I show the 4 levels of thickness for that pen style, indicate whether it's pressure sensitive and tilt sensitive. So we'll start off here with the ball pen. And if we go to the next page, here is the pencil effect, which is both pressure and tilt sensitive. Here you can see what a fountain pen looks like. That's pressure sensitive, but not tilt sensitive. Here's what the feather looks like, kind of like a calligraphy pen, but I didn't want to write calligraphy, so I wrote feather. And basically those are the 4 levels, and not pressure sensitive, but certainly very much tilt sensitive. And finally you have your brush, which is pressure sensitive, but not tilt sensitive. So pretty decent selection of pen styles and behaviors among those styles. Okay, so that's your visual tour. I went over a lot of detail, but I'm sure there might be one or two things I missed. And if you have some questions about that, please pop those in the comments and I'll try to answer those as best I can. But this ends this video, and the next video is going to be the formal review, and it'll be the last video in the series. So we're going to talk about the battery life of the device. We're going to go over my pros and cons, and I'm going to put this into context and basically say, do I ultimately recommend this? And if I do, for whom? So that's all coming up in the final review. I hope to see you there. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be doing a number of device reviews as we go into the kind of release season here in the latter half of 2025. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up, so if you subscribe, you'll be at the front seat of those reviews. All right, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.